Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Okay. Yeah. All right. We're going to do chapter 2 tonight, divine manifestation, but we're going to do the whole thing tonight. I'm going to do the same type of thing that I did last week. We're going to read quickly certain paragraphs and take out the main points, or try to get the main points from them and get the gist of what Rabbi Steinsaltz is trying to present. Now, I want to say one thing before we start this particular chapter. The question that is being asked, and he actually asks it explicitly, in a certain way, is just as important as the answer that he gives. The answer is not like it takes a lifetime of learning to understand the answer. The question, though, is very important in Judaism. It's a basic question that if people ask themselves more and articulate it to themselves more and more and more and contemplate just the question, a lot of things in Judaism then becomes more understandable, okay, and clearer, believe it or not. Especially with regards to what people call davening. Okay, just a small, quick joke to give not a joke, but it's not a joke because Rabbi Steinsaltz told it to me or the people around him when he was saying this. And Rabbi Steinsaltz also said to us, and he said to me, that he hasn't said anything in the past 30 years. He hasn't said anything just solely to make people laugh, even though he did.
I told you that over 25 years ago. So.
Right. Also, I said it a few times. So if he's saying a joke, say it's something that's like a funny, there is a point to what he's trying to say. And he said, and I'll say it here, because it has to do with what we call davening and the prayers, but dafka davening, specifically davening. Anybody here, it's going to be a little bit interactive. Anybody here know what the word davening actually means? Arthur.
I think that Rabbi said it was like daf.
Right.
Like,
so a lot of people give a lot of answers. Right. They gave prayer, they gave this and that. And he said there's been a lot of research done. The actual word and where it comes from is not known. There's really no word called davening. And there's a lot of theories out there where it comes from, that word. And one of the theories is to daf, like Arthur just said. It comes to the word daf, page. And it's a little bit of an inside joke type of thing, wink, wink, is that the Jews made the noun page into a verb. I'm going to mute that person. Okay. So you're paging. You're turning pages. And it's kind of like making fun of ourselves. The whole word itself is making fun of ourselves. Davening is like you're turning the pages.
The interesting thing that the Spartans don't say davening.
Right.
They say tefillah.
Right. Right.
Go figure.
Right.
All right. That says a lot right there.
Right.
All
And so he actually said that, and it was funny when he said this. I remember seeing a National Geographic, actually a magazine, just an article just about this. And he says the Tibetan monks on the mountains in Tibet, they also have what's called prayer rolls. They have rolls or these things that turn around, wheels,
yeah.
And every once in a while, one of the monks has to go out into the cold and to push it, that's their prayer. And he said after a while, one of the monks became smart, and they put little fins on the wheels. So now they don't have to go outside. The wind blows it itself. He says, Rabbi Steinsaltz said, maybe we should get a little bit of fans called the davening fan. Instead of us turning pages, we can stay asleep and just have a fan there that just turns the pages.
But you can pay someone to do it for you at the coach office.
Oh, there you go. To daven for you. Now, why am I saying this? Because there's a lot going on in what we call davening. Unfortunately, a lot of people just do the davening part, right? but there's a lot going on. And if you keep in mind, especially the question that's being asked over here, then a lot of the things that are being discussed in a question type of way, right, make sense in the text that you're reading. So I challenge you and I encourage everybody, after we read this chapter, after we learn this chapter, to go back to your davening and just to keep on asking the question. And you may be surprised that you're going to see this question being raised over and over again during the davening. The people that put together the davening and the text were actually the underlying or overriding question that is being asked is the question that's being asked in this chapter. And the answer is important, but the question is equally as important. So let's get to it, and I'll explain, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Right now I'm talking, and you're like, well, what is Shmuel talking about? But you'll see what I'm talking about. And Rabbi Shantz actually says the question very soon. So first of all, here we go. So I'm on chapter 2. We're not going to do all of the paragraphs, but at the beginning we are going to do a couple of paragraphs here pretty quickly, okay? So let's go. The Holy One, blessed be He, has any number of names. By the way, I should stop right here. This is the Torah portions of the weeks, right here, right now. Exactly. This wasn't the question I was talking about, but this is one of the questions that's being asked over and over again in many different ways of who is this God? What is his name? Paro asks it. Moshe asks it. The Jewish people encounter it. Last week Torah portion when we talked about the song at the sea, right? Hashem Milchama Hashem Shemo, right? We talked about it enough at the end of last week's parsha with Amalek, talking about the name of God is not full until his throne is complete. Go figure. That's, what are we talking about there? How does God reveal himself? Now I'm getting to the main question, by the way, okay? Because we're going straight forward. But this concept is you can really learn all these Torah portions of these weeks through this prism, and it really makes sense. Because that is the questions being asked by everybody all the time. Who is this God? Right? That's what Paro says. Who is this God? I never heard of his name. He's not in my book, right? He's not in my book over here. What's his name? Right? Moshe asks, when the Jewish people ask him, what is your name? What do I tell them? Okay? Because this is going to be the overriding question of Judaism right here. I'm going on. All of these names, however, designate only various aspects of divine manifestation in the world, in particular as these are made known to human beings. Okay, so first of all, in general, what is a name? Sorry, I'm stopping, but these are important points, and there's going to be a lot of points tonight, so just bear with me, and we'll go through them quickly, because every one of these sentences can be studied and understood and contemplated for years, if not for lifetimes, to tell you the truth. And these are the contemplations that the rabbis and Chazal wanted us to contemplate and think about. So they're just Rabbi Shantz is articulating it right now in a certain way. But the thing is that what is a name in general? A name in general is something that's attributed to you so that people can relate to you, so that others can relate to you. If you were by yourself on an island, alone by yourself, it's not so clear if you need a name. Okay? A name is to be able to communicate or to relate to another, to be identified. Okay. Above and beyond this variety of designations is divine essence itself, which has not and cannot have a name. We call this essence or God in himself by a name that is itself a paradox, the infinite blessed be he. Okay, why is that a paradox? Again, we could study this and contemplate this over and over again and really contemplate this, and I strongly encourage everybody to contemplate it, especially on Shabbos morning before you daven. That's the time to do so. Okay, what is this? The infinite blessed be he is a paradox. We won't get into it, but very quick, and Rabbi Shantz will touch upon it very soon, and we'll see why. This term then is meant to apply to the divine essence in itself, which cannot be called by any other name, since the only name that could be applied to the very essence of God must include both the distant and the near, indeed everything. And there's no name for that. Now, as we know, in the realms of abstract thought, such as mathematics and philosophy, infinity is that which is beyond measure and beyond grasp. While at the same time, the term is limited by its very definition to being a quality of something finite. Thus, for example, there are many things in the world, such as numbers, that may have an infinity as one of their attributes, and yet also be limited in their function or purpose, or in their very nature, such as numbers. You can have numbers are infinite, but they're still numbers. They're not all encompassing of everything. They're infinite, they go on forever, but they're still numbers.
It's something that's endless, but yet we're defining it by
it's still defined.
By discrete, specific, entities.
Fields, right. But when we speak of the infinite, blessed be he, we mean the utmost of perfection abstraction, that which encompasses everything is beyond all possible limits. And there's no name for that. Okay? Guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the basic contemplations of Judaism, that according to Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law, not Kabbalah, not mysticism. If you read the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law, written by Rav Yosef Karo, he claims halachically this is a contemplation that needs to be done before every davening every morning. Right? This contemplation, he writes this in a certain way, in his own language. This is not mysticism, it's not Kabbalah, it is, but it's a contemplation that's necessary to think about God. What does that mean? What are we talking about when we're talking about God? Can I even relate to this thing that's infinite? Let's go on. The only thing we are permitted to say about the infinite then would involve the negative of all qualities. This is pure Rambam, pure Maimonides from the Guide for the Perplexed. Okay, if I already read it just a little bit, this is his classic thing. The only thing you could call God is that he's not. When we say that he is Chacham, it means that his wisdom is beyond any type of wisdom. It's like negation of anything we know.
You think you're wise?
It's not even in wisdom. It's like not even that. Right, exactly. For the infinite is beyond anything that grasps in any terms, either positive or negative. Now, all this is nice and good, and we will come, I promise you, in this chapter, it actually comes to something very practical and very important. Towards the end, and we'll get there. I'm just looking at the time because we need to get there's a lot to cover here. But this is going to be a very practical and relevant point. It's not just an abstract, nice philosophical idea, this concept of what truly is the infinite one, blessed be he. Okay? It's very important to understand this. I'll get there. Not only is it impossible to say of the infinite that he is in any way limited or that he is bad, one cannot even say the opposite, that he is vast or he is good. Very dangerous words here. Very dangerous words. This is the ultimate danger. And by the way, it's connected to the holiday we're coming up to Purim. There's a point in God that at its core, there is no good and there is no evil. They're all the same. It's the great equalizer, right? Haman is Mordechai and Mordechai is Haman. Blessed be Haman. You have to get to a place like that. One of the reasons, I mentioned this before in a previous lesson, is one of the reasons that I heard from him, from Rabbi Shazos himself, but one of the reasons why his favorite chapter in Tehillim is 139. Because they have that, David HaMelech, King David has that famous line in there, Kachashecha ka'ora. Like darkness, like light. It's all the same. When you get to the essence, it's all the same. Very dangerous, though. Very dangerous words for people, human beings. Okay? This is the danger right here. Just as he is not matter, he is not spirit, nor can he be said to exist in any dimension meaningful to us. The dilemma, here it is. Here's the question that's overriding almost everything, especially in davening. Posed by this meaning infinity is more than a consequence of an inadequacy of human mind. It represents a simply unbridgeable gap, a gap that cannot be crossed by anything definable.
Okay, so let's do this again. What is the question?
Well, he's going to elaborate. He's going to unpack it even more.
Okay.
The first part of the question is, therefore, there's an unbridgeable gap. There's an unbridgeable gap. So how can we even...
unbridgeable gap between ye and the infinite, blessed be he. So then the obvious question is...
There would, therefore, Rabbi Steinsaltz says, seems to be an abyss stretching between God and the world. And not only the physical world of time, space, and gravity, but also the spiritual worlds, no matter how sublime, confined as each one is within the boundaries of its own definition, creation itself becomes a divine paradox. How is there a world? How does it work? Where was the leap? And why? And why is there a leap? Why is there a world? And what is it? Well, it's one question leads into another. Correct.
Okay.
But you're right. The main, basic, fundamental question is, how is there a world? We talked about this before. How is there a world? To bridge the abyss, the infinite keeps creating the world. What does that mean? His creation being not the act of forming something out of nothing, but the act of revelation. Now, Rabbi Shandel is being a little bit, what's the word? Not cynical or sarcastic here.
Coy.
A little bit coy, because we're going to see very quickly that this revelation in order for there to be revelation, there necessitates to be a hiddenness at first. And that's part of the creation. It's not forming something, it's creating something. But creating something, okay, we'll see. He's going to say it himself. Creation is an emanation from the divine light. Its secret is not coming to existence of something new, but the transmutation of the divine reality into something defined and limited into a world. Meaning God is not creating anything new. All he's doing is transforming the divine light so that there is hiddenness, so that something else can exist. He's creating he's allowing for his divine light to be contracted and transmutated, right? In a way that could create something. What?
Transmuted.
Well, yeah, transmuted. But I'm trying to, but on purpose, there's a mutation here.
Okay.
There's an evolution here. This transmutation involves a process or a mystery of contraction. God hides himself, putting aside his essential infiniteness and withholding his endless light to the extent necessary in order that the world may exist. We talked about this before, and now he's explicitly saying it, right? He withholds his light so there can be revelation. The revelation is just revealing the divine light in a way that allows for something to feel as if they're separate. And that's creation. We talked about this last time, what happens on Rosh Hashanah, if you remember correctly, right? The Yom HaNasir, or the day of sawing, right? That is the ultimate creation, is the fact that there's separation, there's a hiddenness. Within the actual divine light, nothing can maintain its own existence. We keep on going back to that. The world becomes possible only through the special act of divine withdrawal or contraction. Such divine non-being, I love that, divine non-being. It's great. Or concealment is thus the elementary condition for the existence of that which is finite. That's the jump. That's the leap. The leap is when God withholds himself. Okay, and I think I mentioned this, that the Gemara says this in one line. Everything, these are 3 paragraphs. The Gemara says it in one line. Where you find his greatness, you find his humility. Boom. That's in a nutshell. Where you find God's greatness, you find his humility. Meaning, the greatness of God is the fact that he can conceal, he can contract himself, he can withhold himself so that you can feel as if you're separate from him. But you're really not. Okay? You're really not. Truly. Let's go do one more paragraph in this portion over here. Still, even though it appears as an entity in itself, the world is formed and sustained by the divine power manifested in this primal essence. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, this is if you look carefully at Kedusha, every Kedusha we say, because this is the Holy of Holies. This is when we have to all stand up, because this is the fundamental question that the Srafim are asking the Ofanim and the Malachim, and they're all asking, going back and forth. On the one hand, Kadosh, 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 he's beyond everything. On the other hand, Malay Kol Ha'aretz Kavodo, Baruch Kavod Hashem Mimkomo. He's in a finite space. How does it work, they're asking? How is this possible? That tension and that question is what's driving these angels up the wall. How does it work? We see a little bit more than human beings of the divine light, So how is it possible that there's even a world? So on the one hand, he's so great, he's so beyond. On the other hand, we don't see him here. He's in a certain, he's in bimkomo, he's in space. He's in a certain place, in his space. And he doesn't go beyond that space. And that's what I'm trying to say. Once you understand that divine and that fundamental question that's going on constantly, all of a sudden, all of davening becomes basically that tension of going back and forth and that's what the Chazal wanted you to contemplate when you're saying these words.
That we're basically saying we're contemplating the fact that the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh aspect of God, which really is the complete aspect, he's beyond
any grasping.
And yet we're then contemplating and that the whole
then
world
the how's our world?
The whole world is filled with his glory.
Right.
Meaning like it's okay, beautiful.
So the manifest, Rabbi Shana keeps on going. The manifest is now. How does he do it? How does he contract and transmute? What did you use, Jonathan? But transmute. I want to say the real word is tzimtzum. It's how does he contract? In what channels has he created in order to take this divine light and to put them into certain channels so that a hiddenness can be created, and at the same time be connected to this life force that gives it vitality, this duality that's going on within the world. Okay, how I'm reading the manifestation takes the form of 10 sfirot, fundamental forces or channels of divine flow. Okay, this is the Kabbalists taught us based on the way they read the prophets and the Gemara and all the Torah Shabbal Peh, the oral law, is that there are certain types of channels of divine flow, and through them, constantly God is creating the world. Okay? And these sfirot, which are means of divine revelation, and we talk revelation, but really hiddenness, right? Both at the same time, one is necessary before the other, are related to the primary divine light as a body is related to the soul. Meaning, they are in the nature of an instrument or a vehicle of expression, just like our bodies are an instrument of revealing or expressing the soul, as though a mode of creation in another dimension of existence. Forget about that part of the sentence, not important right now. I mean, it's important, but not important to understand it right at this moment. Or the 10th sfirot can also be seen as an arrangement or configuration resembling an upright human figure, each of whose main limbs corresponds to one of the sfirot. One of the ways that the Kabbalists and the prophets understood how God relates to the world, how God is like the divine light, is like the soul coming in, because our soul is also part of the infinite light, but it's contained. On the one hand, it's infinite and it's incomprehensible, ungraspable, but at the same time, it comes into our body and gives our life force. But not only does it give a life force, it gives the vitality. There's a certain part of our soul that corresponds to our parts of our hands, to our head, to our heart, to our feet, to our legs. There's a general soul, and then there's parts of the soul there's part of the part that gives the vitality to the life force to the hand, for instance, not the same type of life force is given to the toenails. Okay? So, but the thing is that now you can understand how the Kabbalists read the pasuk of that man was created in the image of God. It's not so much, it really is telling us how great man is, and because we're like God. But not only that, it's even greater than that. It's in order to understand how God relates and creates the world, look at man. When you understand the figure of man, you will understand how God relates to the world. So man is like a microcosm of how the whole divine plenty comes down to the world and actually creates the world, and also how God reveals himself in the world, and how God is understood and related to, what his names are. Is that understood, kind of? Thumbs up, thumbs down, kind of? Okay, we'll go on. Okay. Each one of these things are deep, and you go on, but I want to get through this to touch upon these points so that you get a general concept of what is going on here. Okay. So the world does not, therefore, relate directly to the hidden Godhead, which in this imagery is like the soul in relation to the human semblance of the human spirit. Rather, it relates to the divine manifestation. when and how this manifestation occurs in the 10 Sfirot. Bummer, right? He's basically saying at this point in this chapter that we do not relate to God himself. We relate to how God manifests himself. The relatable part of God, and the relatable part of God is not God. It's how, what name? Hi, how are you? Who are you? What are you doing now? One of the great revelations when I mentioned the Song of the Sea is that not in Rashi, whatever, the Rashi brings a medrash, but in another parsha regarding the Song of the Sea. But he basically says one of the great revelations to the Jewish people was that, wow, this is the same God that is appearing to us as a soldier and a ish milchama, a man of war, is the same God that appeared to us. Now we understand when he had compassion and he was like revealing himself in a different manner or manifesting in a different manner. And it was like a blow. Wow. Now we get that it's all the same thing. There's a unifying factor. There's an order to the thing. So at this point in the chapter, he's saying human beings, us, do not relate to God himself. It's to the source of God, the source, the divine essence. Rather, how he manifests himself. Put that in the back of your head because it's going to change that around very soon. Okay?
So we don't relate to the actual.
Got it. Right.
The essence of God. We only are really relating to how he projects himself.
Right.
Okay.
Just as man's true soul, his inapprehensible self, is never revealed to others, but manifests itself through his mind, emotions, and body, so is the self of God not revealed as an original essence except through the 10 Sfirot. The 10 Sfirot basically are these different channels, and what I was trying to say before is that the 10 Sfirot was an answer to the question: how does God create a world? How does he contract himself enough that he's hidden enough to create a world? Right? Through these things called the 10 Sfirot. That's the 10 Sfirot are the answer. Now, I tonight do not want to get into the details of the answer. I want to stay on the question. Why? Because learning about it can get us confused. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you can really get into it, and we don't have time for it. Just wanting you to know the question, which we're going to deal with a little bit more, that needs to be contemplated about. The answer is the Sfirot. In a general manner, these are the divine manifestations. Therefore, we're going to skip a little bit in the chapter, okay? Because the next paragraph, we are going to talk about the answer, the 10 Sfirot, just a bit, but on the next page. We're going to skip the next paragraph, okay? We're at page 28. We're going to read this paragraph pretty quickly because this is part of the details of the answer of how God reveals himself, okay? How God manifests himself and appears to us so that we can relate to him and relate to the world. So let's go on. Because of the profound many-sidedness, the 10 Sfirot seem to be shrouded in mystery. Thanks a lot. So it was the thing that was supposed to be like the revelations, and even that is shrouded in mystery. Well, it's shrouded in mystery not because they're incomprehensible, it's because they're so broad and so multi-layered and so, like Rabbi Steinfeld says here, so many sides to it that it's difficult to give one word or one definition to each Sphira. And he says in a different place in this chapter, but we're not going to read that, we also never are able to relate. We never see or encounter a Sphira. That's what we were talking about, angels. Also, Sphira in its purity, in its most of the time we are seeing things, manifestations of a combination of different Sphirot and different degrees and different parts of them. What does this remind you of? Anybody here? It's so
DNA.
What?
DNA.
But more in our religious rituals.
Oh.
It's so fascinating to me that even Ashkenaz Jews have this in their Sidurim because they don't usually learn these parts, which they should, but I think they should be the fundamental learning before anything else. During Sfiras HaOmer, when we start saying when you say what night it is, Chesed Shebechesed, Gvura Shebechesed, Tiferet Shebechesed, right? You know that little prayer that people say in the bottom, and the art scroll that's on the bottom over there, some people say it, because those are all the different combinations, fundamental different combinations of at least the 7 Sfirot, underneath whatever the higher 3, which are connected to the intellect. We don't have to go into it right now, but those are the small little little like angles and different combinations that we're trying to rectify and fix during the time between Pesach and Shavuot. Okay, I'm putting it out there, but it's interesting.
It's a fascinating thing that everybody says this, but nobody,
I think that,
or not nobody, I should say, but so few people actually have any clue what it
oh,
is.
I've been saying for a while that I think that all the davening should be
Pick it up. It's Tati's. Oh no, he's fine.
all the davening should be done in English so that people start asking questions.
Actually, when Rav Steinsaltz, I think he gave a shiur at YIEB about 14 years ago, and that was the topic.
Yes.
Actually, there was a handout about that very tefillah.
Right. So let's go on very quickly on this paragraph because I want to get to the end of this chapter tonight still. So we're going to gloss over this pretty quickly just to get a sense of what he's trying to say. So there's a shrouded in mystery. I'm going on. And there are indeed so many apparently unconnected levels of meaning to each. The levels, moreover, appearing to be unconnected, that a mere listing of their names does not adequately convey their essence. Nevertheless, the Kabbalists did give one word, a word for this, a word for this. They said, what the hell? We're just going to, it's so shrouded in mystery. We're going to find one word that describes everything for each sphera. And then you could go on and understand why did they choose that word. And it really encompasses things on every different level. But you have to, the word I use for myself to explain sphera, it's almost like, I don't know if it's the best word. For me, it makes sense. Maybe for others, it'll help. They're like thrusts of different directions, okay? So when it says chesed, it means it's a certain type of, it could be on many different levels. It could be on the emotional level, on the action level, and so many different levels, but it's a certain type of movement, of expansion, okay? On the other hand, gvura will be a movement of contraction in so many different ways.
Can we describe them as like key? Like in music? I don't know.
That doesn't resonate with me.
No, it doesn't resonate.
Okay.
It's very nicely flirty.
So he's going to keep on saying, Rabbi Shlomo, in a way that each word here, it doesn't make sense. But let's try. That's what he's doing in this paragraph. So let's go on. To say that the first Sphira Keter, crown, is the basic divine will, and also the source of all delight and pleasure, he's telling you all these different things that people use, right? Only touches the surface. But it's still, that's the word we're going to use, okay? As is true with Chachma, wisdom, which is intuitive, instantaneous knowledge. He's so sarcastic here. It's unbelievable. He's like basically giving you all the details, but he's saying, I'm going to give you all they're not so good, but I'll give you all the details so you know them. Okay. Which is intuitive, instantaneous knowledge, while being understanding tends more to logical analysis. That knowledge is different from both, being not only the accumulation of the summation of that which is known, but a sort of 11th sphere. It's a completely, in some Sfarim books, they use the concept of Ruach HaKodesh with that, like the spirit of the divine. In fact, I think Rashi says it explicitly when they're talking. Where do we get these words, by the way? What Betzalel, very soon in the Torah portion of Betzalel, who builds the Mishkan, the tabernacle. These three words are used in the Torah, and Rashi describes very quickly in staccato type of descriptions which each one was. Chachma, Bina, Tvuna, Chachma, Tvuna, V'da'at. Tvuna is Bina, right? And Rashi says, what's Chachma, what's Tvuna, and Da'at, he says Ruach HaKodesh. If you look at that, it's very soon. You'll check up on me in Rashi over there. Anyway, belonging and not yet belonging to the 10. Chesed, grace, is just the fourth sphere as the irrepressibly expanding impulse, or gedula greatness of love and growth, expansion. Gvura, power, is restraint and concentration, control as well as fear and awe. He's saying all these different things that are used, and the best word to use, the Kabbalists came up with gvura, right? Because that encompasses as much as possible all these different things all at the same time. Well, Tiferet beauty is a combination of harmony, truth, compassion. Netzach, eternity, is conquest of the capacity of overcoming. Hod, splendor, can also be seen as persistence or holding on, and Yesod vision, among other things, the vehicle to carry from one thing to condition to another. Malachal kingdom, the 10th and last verse, besides sovereignty or rule, the word and the ultimate receptacle. You do that on your own time to figure these things out. It's really something really kind of cool to think about. Each one of these, strongly encouraged to do so, especially during Sfiras HaOmer. But that's basically the different channels of how God brings his divine light into the world. And he has a little, setup over here, diagram. We're going to skip right now to page 29. Okay? Because now it gets to the practical. A little more of the practical. All these things were nice. It's a nice contemplation. The question is really great. The answer is great, but doesn't make it great. So God, okay, contracts himself. Who cares? How does he contract himself? What difference does it make to me? Well, it does make a difference. And here's the thing. On the paragraph that says, on the other hand, I know it's a middle of a sentence type of thing, but just go with it. On the other hand, the events that occur in our world continuously influence the 10 Sefirot. These are not just static ways of how God brings down the plenty. Remind you a little bit?
There's traffic.
He said that right. He said that before, but I had to skip it. Right. So it's also coming from below to above of the ways of, okay, he's going to give a great analogy here. Affecting the nature and quality of the relations between downpouring light and power and the recipients of this light and power. Now we're getting to practical. Why? An old allegory illustrates this influence by depicting the world as a small island in the middle of the sea, inhabited by birds. To provide it with sustenance, the king has arranged an intricate, remember I talked about plumbing? An intricate network of channels through which the necessary food and water flow. So long as the birds behave as they are endowed by nature to behave, ki karov elecha davar mod, it's not something external, it's internal, right? It's close to you. You're endowed, this is the natural way to behave. Singing and soaring through the air, the flow of plenty proceeds without interruption. But when the birds begin to play in the dirt and peck at the channels get blocked or broken and cease to function properly, and the flow from above is disrupted. So too does the island that is our world depend on the proper functioning of the Sefirot. And when they're interfered with, the system is disrupted. And the disrupting factors themselves suffer the consequences. So that is basically the world. There's another way to put this. You could read it in Rav Nachman Breslov's stories. Rav Nachman Breslov, instead of describing this as in intellectual terms, he gives a story. And he basically has a story of, obviously a prince and this, but bottom line, the point of his story is that all our job is to do is put things back into its place. It's putting things back into place, and the minute you put into place, anybody here did an escape? Have ever done an escape room? Never done an escape room? So in an escape room, a lot of times, if you put the right things in the right places, all of a sudden the door opens, right? Like automatically, right? That's the way to put it. If you put the rocking chair in the right place and the pillow in the right place, it sets off, it triggers, and then all of a sudden, now all of a sudden this pipe can be cleared and opened up. And that's the way it works. So you just have to figure out where to put things and how to put things and where is the right place for everything. Where is the right place? Everything has its place in the world. And just where is the place? So that's, I wanted to make it practical. Let's skip a little bit and go on. Because he's going to, because he's going to unpack this idea of man's actions and consequences based on the Sefirot. Yeah. No, I don't know what it is.
Like a ball rolls down and it sets a tripwire.
Right.
Something flips over,
right.
lands over, so all those things need to be perfectly aligned.
Right. So I'm going to read this next part very quickly because there's 3 or 4 paragraphs. So just again, get the gist of the matter. We're talking about page 31 now. This is what is meant. You have it? Okay.
The third paragraph.
Right. This is what is meant by the reward and punishment that are said to follow in every action of human being. Nor is it only a deed that so affects the citizens of this world. It is also a thought, an intention, or any of the various stirrings of the human soul. For instance, whenever a person prays, whether he prays in the prescribed manner, which is praise, remember it's happening over here, which is oriented toward the higher worlds, or whether he engages in private prayer, utter aloud, or merely contemplating in the heart, he is able to influence the order of events. In fact, a man's spontaneous inward motions, those that have nothing to do with either his overt actions or his conscious thoughts, frequently reach up to and act on higher levels. When a man prays to be cured of sickness, for example, he's asking for grace, for a change in a vast network of systems, from the fixed system that apportions good and evil as a whole to those secondary and fluctuating systems from which descends the physical realm with its own portion of pains and miseries. He is, in other words, requesting a rearrangement within a huge complex of interlocking orders, both in the higher worlds and in the world of nature. You guys remember that movie with, what's his name? Jim Carrey? That he becomes God, or God gives him the powers. No, you don't remember?
Jennifer Aniston?
I can't remember who the girl was. I think it was Jennifer Aniston. But anyway.
Is it Bruce Almighty?
Bruce Almighty. Right. Bruce Almighty. And he's able to like, he starts like, remember he has like a computer and people are asking him things, he gets all the prayers from the world. And he just basically says, okay, yes, because he wants to get to his girlfriend. Right. Okay, fine. It's great and everything. The problem is that things get royally messed up in the whole world. And that is the difficulty of changing the order of things. You know, this is another difficult issue in the world of what we call prayer and asking for change.
Every action has equal opposite reaction.
Exactly.
It's like the story, The Monkey's Paw. You know, you probably haven't, have you read it?
No.
No, okay. anyone here know The Monkey's Paw? Whatever. Okay, you get 3 wishes that get granted, but the problem is it messes up with the order of everything else. And in the end, everyone regrets it in a certain sense. But either way, we ask for one change in the pipeline, but we're forgetting it might come through, but other things are going to be impacted in different ways.
And which religion believes that that's not okay, therefore, to ask? In a certain sense. Islam. Islam is about, it's God's will, inshallah. It's God's will. It's just God's will. Islam really means subservience. Submission. To submit to God's will. This is the way it is. And there's something very deep about that. And in a certain sense, in what we're talking about here, it kind of makes sense, right? It a little bit makes sense. But we're going to get to a point at the end of this chapter that's going to turn things on its head. Rabbi Shana is going to make sure to turn things on its head. So it's not reaching that point of you getting scared to ask for things to be changed. Okay? Unfortunately, this is just a side remark.
Like when we're saying that you are on what, Yom Kippur? Like
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I was going to say that very soon. But the thing is that we're seeing even today. I'm seeing it with responses to COVID and stuff like that. There's a lot of people out there, what they call themselves frum people, who are basically saying it's God's will. It's God's will. And now, where is the line? Where is the line? That's another thing to contemplate. Where is the line? How much do we have to take into consideration that if we're changing something, asking for something to be changed, then we're interfering with God's will? What is God's will? What kind of connection? And if we just said before that we're not connecting or relating to God himself, then maybe we should leave it alone. Maybe we should leave it alone and not pray. I'm not talking about davening now. I'm talking about praying. Let's go further. Let's see. Because he's setting up the world as if it's very set. It all makes sense. And the human being has a lot of power. What do we do with that power? That's also the flip side of the coin of that the human being was created in the image of God. Okay. I see that's 9:44.
Yeah, I think we should.
I'm going to skip towards the end right now.
This might be a 2-class chapter.
No, I don't. I want to progress. Okay.
You want to finish it? Okay.
Okay. We might have to touch upon in next class. Go to page 34, please. We will skip the next part, and I really encourage people to read the other paragraphs. Page 34 towards the
I'm
end.
really going to encourage people. It's a really awesome chapter to go through, particularly in a chavrusa. I really think this is a powerful chapter.
Okay, so let's. But here's the kicker. Here's the
Page
kicker.
34?
This is classic Steinsaltz right here. What he's going to do. He's going to change everything and turn everything on its head. Page 34 make sure that you understand what is the ultimate. Page 34, where it says precisely. Precisely because the divine is apprehended as infinite, as an infinite, not finite force. Everything in the cosmos, whether small or large, is only a small part of the pattern. So there's no difference in weight or gravity between any one part or another. Remember we said, not good, not evil, everything is equal? It's the flip side of the coin of that everything is equal means therefore, there's 2 ways of looking at that. There's one way of looking at that, therefore nothing is important, or everything is important. Because everything is equal, therefore, it doesn't make a difference for God. It's just as important what the greatest tzaddik is thinking and what the most simplest child is also saying.
I mean, this is also basically the idea we don't know the import. We couldn't. We don't know
The movement of a man's finger is as important or unimportant as the most terrible catastrophe. For as against the infinite, both are of the same dimension. Just as the infinite can be defined as unlimited in the sense of being beyond everything, so it can be defined as being close to and touching everything. Here is the point of the personal human contact. For in spite of the vastness and order of all those systems, the independent act of man and its relations cannot be explained in terms of either mechanics or, on the other hand, of magic. Nothing is set in stone. There is a direct connection to the infinite because he cares. Because everything is important. And he does care what we say. When one relates only to the Spirot, very important, this is over and over, emphasized over and over again, one is not relating to anything real. I just explained to you a whole world of how God created a very certain system, but they're not real. It's just a system. The only thing real is God himself. And we can relate to him. For deeds or thoughts do not operate by themselves separate from the infinite. He who is the very life of all the worlds. All the systems and Shirot, even though they carry out the laws of nature and beyond nature, have nothing real in themselves. In relation to the infinite light himself, they are less than a nothingness closed or covered by the appearance of something real. They're only names, designations, points of departure for establishing a relationship, have nothing substantial in themselves. So that prayer, repentance, the cry of man to God, even though they're dependent upon and cut across a limited deterministic system, neither work upon nor even address that system. It circumvents. It goes around it. The direct connection is more powerful than acting within all the systems because God is infinite. When man reaches certain heights, he learns more about God, the order and arrangement of things, relations between one action and another, and the power and significance of law. Nevertheless, in the last resort, the relationship to the divine is individual. It is a completely private affair. The relationship of a single man in all his uniqueness of self and personality, oblivious of the infinite distance between himself and God, precisely because God is his being infinitely distant, beyond any possible contact, is himself the one who creates the ways, the means of contact in which every thought, every tremor of anticipation and desire on the part of man work their way until they reach the Holy One himself, the infinite, blessed be he. So in the end, because God is infinite, he's created all these different systems, but at the end of the day, there's a direct line to him. And going back to my wife said, and this I heard from Rabbi Steinsaltz as well, at the end of the day, yes, are we scared to interfere? And there's a whole interlocking system that God created. Yes, yes, yes. But we have to remember, we say, there's a prayer that we say before saying the Kriya Shema, the Shema at night. And it says there, please absolve us of all our sins and cleanse us and atone us, but not through trials, tribulations, suffering, pain, and disease. But wait a second. If that's what's necessary in order to cleanse ourselves, as Rabbi Steinsaltz asked, right? Then why are we asking not to have it? This is the way to do it. Inshallah, right? The will of God. That's the way to get cleansed. And he said, no, because we're talking to the infinite. If you're so infinite, God, you figure out how to atone us without all those regular ways.
But we're saying, because you're so infinite, God.
Right.
We know you can figure it out.
You're infinite. Figure it out.
We know
There's infinite amount of...
fully confident.
Right.
In your abilities.
So am I going to interfere? Maybe. You figure it out. How it doesn't interfere with all the interlocking pieces. Can I say yes, 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 yes to all the prayers and it still not mess up everything? Because you're infinite, you can figure it out.
Okay, but wait a second. In one sense, you're saying here that like God has this whole system with how he expresses himself in our world.
Yes.
Okay. And yet this closing says, yet somehow he chooses to come to the system, but we have this direct access.
So there's two systems going on.
Okay, but right. His is more complicated, but somehow we're able to circumvent that. But then how does that relate to this mushal of the birds on the island? Because it's saying that the birds on the island, they go, if they're not flying and soaring and somehow they do the opposite of what they're supposed to do, they are messing with the pipeline. So
that's what the Gemara says, that tshuva, repentance, was created before the world.
Okay.
There's the world and how it functions. And we must function in the world, right? We have to do more we have to give more power to the chesed channel, the expansion, the giving. And the way you do it is give tzedakah and charity, and that gives more power to the whole chesed, divine plenty, being able to come down to the world. The whole world becomes more kind, more expansive, more embracing. You really change the makeup of the world in a natural way, and you have to work on that level. But when push comes to shove, and there's no other choice but to say, I messed up, can you change this now? That can even happen because that's beyond the nature of the world.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
What the Gemara says, Rabbi Shans talks about this a lot around Yom Kippur. He says you have to understand what it means by tshuva. He gave a great mashal once, a few times. He says it doesn't make sense, this concept of repentance.
That is so beautiful.
When somebody jumps off a building wanting to commit suicide, God forbid, he can't regret it and change. And when he's at the 18th floor after falling already 10 floors, you're done. When you drink poison, you die. You can't say, oh, I regret it. But with tshuva sama, because it's beyond these natures of the sefirot and stuff like that, so God is creating the world that's functioning on two different levels. There's the system, which we have to act within that system. And that's what the Torah and mitzvahs are for. This is where this place goes. This is how you create more kindness and expansiveness. This is where contraction has to happen. Everything has its place, and we have to function. And the Torah is a whole system that tries to tell you where everything goes. But sometimes we have to close the book and say, God, I need help. And he's able to circumvent this whole system. Do you rely on it? Not necessarily. God doesn't want you to rely on it. In fact, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed. Not only not, it's not going to work. If you're sinning because you're going to say, oh, I'll do tshuva later, I'll repent later, it says already, it says in a Mishnah already, in Masechet Yoma, in the Tractate of Yoma, talking about Yom Kippur, one that says, I will sin, and then I'll repent, is not able to repent. Now, not able means we don't give him a chance, but if he really pushes through, it will work, because there's still even hope for that person. Okay, there's always hope. As long as you're alive, there's always hope. Okay, but the thing is that there's two systems going on, and that's what I wanted. One of the things I wanted to. There's really two points that I wanted to bring out in this chapter, or two or three. But that was one of the main ones. Is that there's a system which is very important to understand and contemplate, really contemplate. These are the contemplations that need to happen during Pesukei Zimra, and especially during the blessings of Shema, right before Shema. This is what they're talking about in the bracha of Yotzera Ma'orot and Habocher B'Amar Yisrael Ba'ava. That is the contemplation that's supposed to be going on. That's what you're supposed to be thinking about. How is this world being created with this infinite God? How is it possible? How does it work? And it's trying to describe to you how it's working.
Right? You know, it's such an interesting thing. One of my favorite little tefillas is by Udal, the daughter of the Baal Shem Tov. And I've always found this to be such a beautiful and helpful tefillah. When she said, or it's attributed to her, she said, Abishter, I know in the end you're going to help me. But in the meantime, could you help me? And like, it's actually so powerful. It's so true. It's a very deep. But the thing is, in a certain sense, we're saying, and I know in the end you're going to work through your spheros. The world is it's coming through. If you are channeling yourself into this world. In the end, I know it's exactly how it's supposed to be. That's how you've arranged it. That's how you've set it up. That's how you want it. That's how you want your will in this world to be actualized.
Exactly.
But right now, in the meantime, could you help me? Could my tefillah, could my longing, my need override the whole system right now? And while that seems like in some ways such a simple prayer, just like an emotional, raw sort of prayer, it's actually profoundly deep. I mean, it's like a simplistic expression of a deep system that's happening.
Right.
Never thought about that before.
I hope that brought up a little bit of like food for thought type of things to contemplate and think about. Again, it's worthwhile to read a little bit more details about what the answer is. How is this world created? There is an answer. It's something to think about, to contemplate over and over again. And at the same time, it's a very empowering of the human being. Very empowering
That's why
chapter.
I'm so glad why you're saying that, because ultimately at the end of this, it's like this whole, all these worlds, all of this system, and really it's like we say how olam nivra bishvili, like bishvili nivra olam. The world was created for me. The world was created, and the human being it's almost frightening. I almost want to eschew it and be like, I don't want this much power.
Yes.
Please, I don't want it to be so important because it gives me a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I hate it.
But yeah, I hate it too. Anyway,
it's like being a parent.
Oh, it is. It really is. I didn't sign up for this.
No.
But the truth is that at the same time, it's breathtaking.
Yes.
It's breathtaking just how in love God is with the human being.
And we'll finish with what Rabbi Stein's, one of Rabbi Stein's favorite quotes from Menachem Mendel of Kutsk that he used to say. Menachem Mendel of Kutsk used to say, I wish people would believe in God as much as God believes in people. So with that, we'll end. And it's great seeing everyone. And we'll go on next week.
Any questions? Comments?
Yasher Koahem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Ciao.
Great. Okay.
By the way, it's the Kutzker Rebbe's yahrzeit tonight.
I know,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah, it is.
So you have to end with that.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if I had the L'chaim, I'd say.
Thank you.
Good night.